Greetings. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, sharing, joining, subscribing, following, wherever you're at. I'm Amy, also known as Modern Day Sybil, and that's on purpose. And today's topic is going to be a little bit around the 9-day calendar, because it has been quite a while, and it links to so many things. So I want to talk about that, give some little hints and pointers, and eventually conclude around the story of said Goliath's mother, aka Oprah, or Ophrah, maybe is how it was pronounced in Hebrew. I should look that up, actually. So, before we begin, I just want to point out one of the many things that helped me remember who we are in the Americas. So, feathers and our hair. So, I don't need a clip to put the feather in my hair and to make it stay. It will not fall out. I have to pull it out. It doesn't just fall out of our hair. Okay? And when you do pull it out, what's nice is most of us have oils in our hair. You continue the pull. If you pull it out this way, it kind of tugs on the hair, but if you go this way, it also oils the feather a little bit, and it's easier to take out of our hair. So just wanted to mention this because these are some of the many hints I think that we are given as to who we are and why we see feathers and other adornments, especially on the head and crown, that look similar to our hair, especially the more coily and, say, attracted to the sun type of hair. Okay? All right. So, how did I get here? How did we get here? So, we are in a new moon phase, and according to the Chinese, Japanese, and Asian calendar, it is the end of the year. They are celebrating the end of the year, and they will be celebrating the new year. Wait, is this the second new moon of the year? No, because we're mid-February. So the second new moon of the year to us is the first new moon for them. And I want to kind of bring it all back to how I got into the 9-moon calendar, where this all comes back to the great mothers and the moon, the stars, the planets, and the earth. Okay? And where it's brought me to today. And why we're going to go into Oprah. So, it all actually started for me with word breakdowns, taking words and moving them around. And the very first one, so I would do it playfully with certain things, and it's also because I have like minor dyslexia. I shouldn't say minor, but it doesn't show up in the way that we've been shown, say like on TV. It happens, it's more phonetic for me, and when I go to spell, I'll actually spell words out, leaving certain vowels out, and or putting certain letters in. Like I like to use the example of, because of should be spelled O-V according to our phonetics. Anyways, this is why I get into language. So one of the first words were breaking down the word evil and spelling it backwards, and it spells live, and then looking at God and spelling God backwards, and it spells dog. And I love dogs. Don't get me wrong. And worshiping dogs maybe wouldn't be the worst thing on the planet, but how we have been taught around dogs and the owner, or said steward, and how they behave. And I started thinking about that, and at that point I was still a like Almighty God of the Bible believer, and I had theorized that the Bible was actually written to manipulate our minds into believing what is in it, and that we would create it. And this is before I understood about like metaphysics and how our mind works. I just noticed the world because part of my neurodivergence, and also because of being adopted, and then also being mixed and adopted to a pale family, right? So I analyzed a lot of things. I have good pattern recognition for the most part. So it started with words, and then kind of getting more into, say, gnosis or spirituality, so to speak, and listening to these different theories. And also with the words, I went into studying a little bit about Hebrew and a little Latin, because this is where a lot of what we have been taught comes from, specifically like the alphabet, right? That is a Hebrew. Those are Hebrew words, okay? So that brought me to feminine, the word feminine and female, because I had thought about the old story Jack and the Beanstalk and fee fi fo fum, and when it comes to like phi or phi delta kappa, right? Phi means first or beginning, and so I broke that word down into being female first, or first female, then male, female. And then how we see in woman, we see man and women, but we only see man and man. We don't see like two words to describe this being. And this has been word manipulation, because females are the original man, and then through so many manipulations they've made it to where we use our word to describe them, and they've created a word to describe us, and mentally that creates a bunch of things, along with getting back to like how I got here. Okay, so then there's feminine, and I realized at this point I had also started recognizing 9, because in certain practices, such as like Qigong and other forms of meditative physical practice, also forms of martial arts, they will do it in rounds of 9. And then I realized, like, we'll say they were dressed to the 9s, and we will say we also have 9 months for gestation and birth for the female human. And I just started realizing, like, 9 is the number. 9, feminine and feminine. So, okay. So I started piecing it all together. So we have the 9, and then we have the female first. So this must mean that her number links to 9. And at this time I had learned a little bit about some of the Orishas, and I knew about Oya, and she's one of my faves, and her number is 9. And I just started thinking, wow, this is incredible. So from there, and then also recognizing, like, the rosary is 108 beads typically. The prayer beads will be in sequences of 9. And we'll see this across Asia and India. We see it a little bit in Catholicism with the rosary. And so we see 9. And this is where I also started noticing in some of these places, there's the melanated Great Mother being represented, or the information coming from, and then I started just multiplying that in, and then researched around the number 9. If you don't know, it's one of the only numbers that when added or multiplied to another number, it will reduce back down to 9. It's the only number who does that. And then if you start playing mathematically with numbers, 1, 10, 0, And then even the word zero, because zero is a circle. And then we say one, but this is the true one, a circle. A circle is a true one. And then they tell us that that means zero, but it's everything. There's so much mind stuff in it, but it all goes back to the feminine, because the circle also represents the feminine, the female, the original, the blueprint, the circle, where everything's connected. Okay? And so, in all that time, somebody mentioned 9-day calendar, because also if you take our day, and we already see that it's divided into like 3, 6, and 9. So we have 30 minutes. We have 60 minutes. Okay. Then the day is 24 hours, which is 6. With a 9-day calendar, or with 9 time, because mentally, every 90 minutes your brain resets. Did the great mothers know this? I think yes. And so we did things in 3, 6, and 9. So we did 30, 60, 90. And our hour, if we were to break the day down, which I don't think we really did until calendars, I think we did in different ways. But if we were to break the day down, this 24-hour day, into 18 90-minute hours. I know it sounds confusing, but so the 18 equals 9, but the hour wouldn't be 60 minutes, it would be 90 minutes. And it would still fit in our 24 hours. It would equate to the same thing, but we would literally function 3, 6, and 9 in doing things, so to speak, right? So, this brought me to, somebody brought up the 9-day calendar. I started looking into where calendars come from. Where do we get the name month? Month goes back to moon. Month goes back to menses. And so it all went back to the great mother. It all went back to the female. And I was just like, what? Okay. So I started thinking, we didn't really worship the moon. We didn't worship the sun. We didn't worship. Worship is a modern concept, right? Putting something above all other things, even life and logic and so many things. And we didn't do that. In Great Mother egalitarian societies, pre-patriarchy, we did not do that. Okay? So, what did we worship? If we did worship something, if we were to consider something so important, my theory is it would have been Earth. And then I started thinking, how come in astrology they don't talk about Earth? Why is everything the stars and the sun and where this planet is, where that star is, when the reason we're even looking at that is because of the Earth. Everything that we get is from the Earth, and we don't really, even in astrology, Earth isn't really revered. It's one of the first females that is revered yet not revered, right? Like turned into something we're not paying attention to, even with like certain rituals or certain things. It seems to be too outside of us, when theoretically water, being so important, is here on Earth. And so that would have been something. We lived near water. We revered water. Water was so important to everything. So Earth and water would have been the first things we really worshipped. And then from there, looking up at the night sky, not the day sky, but the night sky, darkness. And we're going to dive into that word breakdown as well, because one of my friends pointed out to me, and I feel like I haven't mentioned this enough, is we have developed a language where dark is bad. People will say love and light. Okay, that's fine. But it gives this illusion that darkness is bad. And then we have propaganda that teaches not just systemic racism, but subliminal constructs of racism by eluding bad things to dark, and then also eluding that dark people, quote unquote, do bad things. So people will, I did this. There's old videos where I literally say the same thing, and somebody pointed out to me, hey, when you do that, you're affirming that things that are dark are bad. Just say bad. Don't say dark. So it started me down another rabbit hole where I went into where we come from, where we are created in triple darkness. You are under a layer of skin. You are inside an organ, and then you are wrapped in a sack of fluid, right? You are literally being created in triple darkness. We plant seeds in darkness. And as another influencer here, I will quote her, Cassandra Faye Floyd, pointed out an example. If you're in the desert and it's daytime, you are praying for darkness. You are praying for shade. You are praying for the feminine. You're either praying for water or shade, which is the Great Mother. It is where all things are created, and it is to where we return. We don't return to the light. We return to the darkness. We return to where all things form. And all things are warm and comfortable and loved and held within a system that is developmental. Okay? And so we use the words, I think bad is the best one, because even evil links to, as I said before, if you spell it backwards, it means live. What do we do with that? And then also, if you watched one of my other videos where I talk about the devil, where the name the devil comes from, it comes from Devi. And then the devil is where we get evil from. So we just took one word to shorten it to describe something bad. Don't say evil, just say bad. So it helps to clarify that Great Mother, who is highly melanated, is good, and is in that darkness is life and sight of example nighttime and the stars. Okay, so that also was incorporated in all of this in my research and studies. So I talked about breaking down the day and recognizing like we could have an 18-hour, the hour being 90 minutes, day. The numbers would all match. It would be very vibrational. And it would have we would have a different outlook around work and time spent, so to speak. And then time in itself is a description of how we perceive the cycle, right? But before there was a name for it, we just perceived the cycle. We didn't worship. And how did we perceive that cycle? Through the moon and the stars. Yes, the sun was included because the stars helped let us know what the sun was going to be doing. Period. We followed the moon and the stars. You see it anthropologically, you see it archaeologically, and you see it in scripture. We have many stories around following the stars and how important it was to know the stars. Okay? So, in that, what else is 9? The planets. When you include Earth, you eliminate the sun and the moon as far as like the objects to be considered planets moving, or what we've been told are planets, because who knows, maybe those, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? I don't know for sure. I haven't traveled to these planets, but from what we're told, in our solar system, there are 9 planets when you include Earth. 9. And Pluto. And when I talked about the Sumerian original astrological calendar, they had 18 constellations. Doesn't that break down to 9? There is something around 9. There is something around the Great Mothers and what we studied. And so it brought me to the 9-day calendar. And when I started getting into the 9-day calendar, when I first started it, I changed the name. So I kept most of the names of the days of the week, but I put them in order from Earth being the first planet, and then the next closest planet, which would be Mercury, then the next closest planet, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus. No. Did I miss out Saturn? Saturn is the 6th farthest from us. So in that order. I'll grab my calendar here in a moment. Yeah, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. And Uranus would be the 7th planet. And when we go into numbers and then we link energies, I feel like this was also on purpose, the number 7, and giving 7 all of the credit when the optimum number would be 9. Okay? And then all the way to Pluto. Pluto would be the end of the 9-day calendar. And then it would start over again with Earth. And there would be 3 9-day calendar weeks. And then at the end, where we end on 27, because if you break down 27 equals 9, then we have 3 days of what I call days out of time, which I did hijack from the Mayan calendar because they actually celebrate a day out of time, but they are not the only ones who incorporate days out of time, what we now call time. So there would be a part in time where the moon, not just its position, but when the moon is in a position where we can see her clearly, she goes into the dark part, the new, what we've named the new moon. It could also be the no moon, which might be where we get nomos from, the no moon or the dark moon. Okay? Because you can't see her. She is dark, right? And before that, sometimes you can't see her. And then even it's not until that first light starts showing up that you, with your bare eyes, you can see her again. Then, okay, so I started noticing that a lot of our holidays would fall on a Saturn's day. This would include New Year's, Easter, 4th of July, even some holidays like Flag Day would fall on holidays that are celebrated by other cultures would start on a Saturn's day, according to my 9-day calendar, not an actual Saturday, which is what Saturday is named after Saturn, but on the Saturn's day on my 9-day calendar. Then I went down this big rabbit hole, and somewhere I decided, when it comes to the Chinese calendar and how they do them, so I started following their calendar, and their calendar, the first day of the New Year's on the Chinese calendar is the first day after the new moon. Okay? And so I thought, well, let's try the 9-day calendar with that. Oh my gosh. Rarely are there any days in between the new moon and the end of the 9-day calendar with starting the 9-day calendar the first day after the new moon. So I have now created 2 9-day calendars. One that starts the first day of the new moon, and I'm not talking about the one that shows up on the calendar, because that is typically the one that shows up on the calendar is the one I base the first day after the new moon, because according to my calculations, very oftentimes the day after that new moon is either still a new moon or it is beginning into the waxing gibbous light, so to speak, moving towards the full moon again. So when I did that, I recognized, so many of you may know that we've been told that Christmas is actually based off of a old Roman or European celebration called Saturnalia. Well, when I would do the 2 different starts of the 9-day calendar month, specifically in December and another time of the year, I think during the summertime, Saturnalia or Christmas or the day after, and also the other one was Hanukkah and sometimes Ramadan, would have a double Saturn's day according to my 9-day calendar. So these were things the great mothers did. They paid attention to the stars. And then I started going into the stars. And because of all the things, especially around astrology, and I started recognizing, like, I personally feel that the astrology that we're taught, it's not wrong, but it is very patriarchal. And it is around a calendar that was given to us. It's not a calendar that we originally followed, and it depended on where we were and who our teachers were that we went by. Because I wanted to encourage us to stop saying that New Year's is in spring. Who told you that? Did we just decide that? And if we did things by the moon and the stars, then what was going on with the stars in the spring? And where were we? And what did it signify? And then, if I'm going to tell you a story so that you remember how to move about the world, I'm going to tell you a story about this being in the sky that gives us messages. Okay? Almost all these stories go back to star lore. Period. It's stunning. And then some of the stories are completely made up, possibly, which is why I'm going to get into Oprah and Goliath. But, okay. So, I went into the darkness part. All right. So, this is my overall theory about everything and why I share what I share. Okay? My overall theory is that everything, the most suppressed people on the planet are women, and then highly melanated women, and like number one, highly melanated women, and then less melanated women, all the way to pale women being suppressed, lied about, not listened to. I mean, it is overwhelming, the amount of, oh, I guess they do fall out of our hair. Okay, this one's in there. Maybe I just didn't have it in there well enough. Okay, anyhow, the most oppressed and suppressed. And if you are the things that they say we are, which is like the weaker race, and we don't have strength, and we're more emotional, then why the suppression? And I feel this way about the whole entire planet. Like, if we've been, hijacked by the said Anunnaki, which I've already told you is literally the name of a goddess who created Earth, which goes back to the stars. The Anunnaki, which would make sense of people from the stars, right? Because of star lore. This is my theory. But not just my theory about the name. Okay, but if we are being told that this is how the story goes and we follow it, but we're not actually checking in with what is happening, looking at the stars, traveling around looking at the stars, because that's when you really notice it. When you travel, look up at the stars. Notice where Orion, the Pleiades, where are the bears, Ursa Major and Minor. Where are they? Where is her tail at? Is her tail pointed straight up, sideways? Is it close? Does it seem far away? Does it seem to shift as time goes by, as they move through the sky? What is Orion's position? Is he upside down? Is he right side up? Is he moving this way across the sky? Or is he moving this way across the sky? Or is he upside down moving across the sky? We paid attention to all that kind of stuff, no matter where we went. And the great mothers would sit and tell these stories about these stars. So my theory is that everything, the birther is the teacher. Everything comes from the great mothers. We followed the stars. We watched nature. We followed what nature had to teach us. We utilized the elements. When we talk about energy work, we talk about tarot, we talk about psychics. That is use of the elementals, right? Connection to the trees, plants, water, stars. Those are our elemental gifts. We practiced those. We allowed vibration, singing, humming, and utilized vibration. And we learned and did so much. This is where those magnificent castles were created. These healing sound chambers, echo healing chambers. We helped create that, the great melanated mothers around the world. And yes, it looks like there were giants. And we say giants today, and I think there were extreme giants, like the size of mountains. But then there were also regular giants. If you're a Gen X, or if you've watched the movie, good grief, now I can't think of it, Princess Bride. Obviously I can't think of it. Andre the Giant is in that movie, and he literally is like very tall. He has a very deep voice. He was a living giant. And then there's another one, Klein, I want to say his last name is Keel, Richard Keel, who was in some of the 007 and James Bond movies back in the late 70s and early 80s. Also very, very tall, very deep voice, living giant. So I say all that somewhere the key was to remove the great mothers from being the teachers, from being the authoritarians, from being the leaders. And that was done by eliminating them, terrifying them, turning each other. Women against women came with the witch hunts. It was strategic because women were always, you know how we said like the bro code? That came from us. We had the sister code. Every time there was another, we were always on each other's side because we knew that we knew. We didn't compete with each other. And also back then, there was no need for competition because the situation was we chose, we decided, we picked who we wanted to be with. And sometimes we did share. Polyamorism, being polyamorous is also not modern. That actually goes way, way, way back. Like we were so connected that many of the terms and things that we have been told that we did or that we were or who we are in comparison to each other and to males is our magic, our elemental gifts, our knowledge taken, regurgitated back to us, with them being the ones. And when that happened, it removed the reverence of the Great Mother. It removed the truth of who we are. It removed our connection to the Great Planet Mother on so many levels, creating work. So in the story where Marduk talks about how he changed the stars, also it's the 7th quote in the is it the Bhagavad Gita? I think it is. But in that story, it's the 7th quote. I have a theory around the number 7 and stripping it away from the power of 9 and creating an angle or a way of doing things that isn't completely cyclical like 9, because 9 also relates to the swirl. The 9 shows our cycle of the planet and the movement of the stars. It brings in more conscious awareness around the body, because we have at least 9 chakras, not just 7. What? No, we would have, everything would be, if we did give it a number, it would go to 9, and we would find it. I think there's a chakra right here. That's at least 8. Okay. And I think we have side chakras, like our ears, right? Could our ears be another chakra? Then we would have 9, right? We'd have 4 just in our face alone. Or 5, I think. 4. So, just giving examples as to how we got here in this mental manipulation game, because we saw how we could mentally influence ourselves through the elements, through practice, through vibration. So then they take that practice, vibration, teachings, and they teach you first, you get your most freedom from like birth to school. But then even still, like within this nuclear family, there's competition being taught between the siblings. There's this weird dynamic with the parents, because the mother's running everything, but somehow the father is the leader, unless it's a very aware and educated egalitarian home, right? Because they do exist. They are existing more. But the setup. And immediately in school, you are misguided around feelings because of competition. So somebody may not tell you if you get a bad grade. Some of you have heard some of my videos around these type of things, but this is for the new people who might be joining, and kind of a recap to get to just describing the theory and how we got here, and how I theorize we're going to do it by this type of video where we talk about how we break down things. So as a kid, you're in school and somebody gets an A and you get a C, and you can feel there's something, this doesn't feel good. And then the person who got an A is like, they feel good. And the teacher is instructed into how to respond and how this teaching go. We didn't do that. We didn't teach like that, because we knew what it would create. It creates like internalized shame. And then if you're not emotionally intelligent, well, how are you going to express that? That's the plan. That's literally part of the plan, because at a young age, if you start internalizing your emotions, by the time you're 15 and 16, you can encourage your mother, who is in charge of the finances, and she will encourage the father, who typically has been told that brings in the finances. This is all changing, I'm saying, but this is what was taught for a long time. That she will then, recognizing the same feelings, watching whatever's happening with the children. So then you can encourage people to spend more money on education, more money on, it starts influencing how money is spent. Because emotions lead to impulse. And if you are removed from nature, where nature teaches you, impulse needs to be a necessary reaction, not the go-to reaction, in the sense of where the emotions are. So if you have internalized competition from childhood, you're gonna internally teach yourself how to go through that, or work through it, or work through the emotions through it. You bring in different genders teaching different aspects. You know, the education system is a system on purpose to instill lack of emotional awareness. It's based on competition. It's based on intellect more than creativity and critical thinking, long-term critical thinking. School year is very short. You cram everything into your head and then you give it back. And then while you're doing that, you might also be doing band or theater or some sport, music, right? And that's if the school provides those things, because those things, and then language, you might be learning another language. Schools used to provide all that stuff, just for everyone. It wasn't limited to who could afford it. But this is the long term, and then you bring that into adulthood, and people are still competing, and we're just now getting to a place where people are recognizing, like, oh, this is around my emotions. No one actually taught me how to work through my emotions. This is impulse control. And letting ourselves reprogram ourselves to ourselves, rather than what society has taught us is the way to go, or to the way to success. Because those are all things great. We didn't do that. We weren't like, okay, everybody get up, we're gonna go. No. Even when we were basing it around agriculture and kind of sedentary, when we stopped being so nomadic, no. Whoever was already naturally inclined, connected to the cows, the horses, the chickens, the outside, the sun, rising with the sun, those were the ones who would take care of the land. It wasn't like designated to a certain person with a certain strength and with a certain gender. We didn't do that. And then when it came to like policing fires and stuff like that, we didn't do that either. Not in the way that it's, kind of specified today. It was communal. The whole community would help put out the fire. The whole community created policing. I wonder if that's something that needs to be done now, where the communities get together and there are one or two people each section of the day walking the neighborhood, helping people walk home, helping people navigate what is happening. Because when the community is organized, there's less influence from outside of the community. And I'm not talking about organizing in a way that is like creating a language, creating, like people still speak Pig Latin, right? The ude, uye, ixpe, igpe, atenle, right? Okay. We create a language so that we can speak freely and everyone knows what we're saying. And when I say everyone, I mean great mothers specifically. And creating certain aspects of awareness as to what communities used to look like. This is where a lot of the secret societies and all of that even stem from, because the overstanding that community creates safety. And what used to be the go-to community were the women. You would go to the great mothers, you would go to the aunties, you would go to the moms, the grandmothers, the great grandmothers. That's who we went to, because they knew. They would teach us, they would let us know. And so when we start doing that again, and in a way that is very female-centered in that we start recognizing if we do feel competition with each other, or we feel slighted or left out. I have a little side story. There's somebody in my life that I constantly have shared theories around helping the body feel better, and different ways of creating movement, and different foods to help with the guts, because I have education in the guts, I have education around massage and the body, I have education around anthropology, right? So I'm sharing this, and I often hear this from many people, mostly males, but also females, where a male said the same exact thing, and this male becomes like this male chiropractor becomes the kind of like the go-to person, when the female in the family who has said the same things for years, it's not heard until a male says it. And these are the type of thing that's, to me, that is like ingrained patriarchy, that is ingrained male-centeredness, and working ourselves out of that is what I'm trying to share. Like, that is based in an emotional, there's something also emotional that teaches us, like, we need to listen to the males over the females. That is literally safety, because they show that oftentimes if we don't do what they say or listen to them, or agree, it can be very dangerous for us. And if we have other sea stars, uneducated, unaware that they are ingrained into this system, have trouble supporting each other and stepping out of that system. So that's how I got here. The long and short of it. So a little bit around the moon calendar. I wanted to share like how I got to that, and I will do a specific video sharing where we're at in the new year with the planets and the new moon. And I will go ahead a few months and kind of talk about what the planets and the moon and the stars are kind of saying about said world. Okay. But I went into a little bit around giants and speaking about the two actors that were obvious giants. Okay. And so one of the females I wanted to bring reverence to was the story around the mother of Goliath, Oprah, also Afra, okay, is another name given. So Oprah is the sister of Ruth, the one that we are known about in the Sybil Bible, okay, in that story, the same Ruth. So they were sisters-in-law. I apologize. They were sisters-in-law, and they were linked through Naomi. And the story is that when Oprah left Naomi, she cried. There are several stories. Most of them are pretty bad. She cried tears, and they turned into 4 sons. So there are several stories. Another story, which is basically when she turned away from Naomi, she was rejecting their God. So she was committing a bad thing. And she's given the other name, evil. She was evil. She was basically bad. And that she was shunned and then thrown into like a group, or not thrown into a group, but surrounded by a bunch of males, and then ended up going into the Philistines and having 6 quote-unquote bastard sons, one of them being Goliath. Now, did you say she cried tears and gave birth to them, right? So are they combining two stories? So, and the story supposedly is in the Torah to bring about the chastity and goodness of Ruth and the wickedness and badness of Oprah. So again, we have a story where a female is degraded because of her choice. And it didn't go along with what is expected of women. And so, also, so when I first went into the story, it's because I had been given the impression that she was a giant. So she possibly was a giant. And I think that there were more giants back in the day. So one of my mythological theories about how patriarchy really ended up taking over is the slaying of the dragons. I think the great mothers, I think there were dragon daughters, and they were very connected to the dragons and griffins and such. And they were protected because we also see throughout history, they may not be dragons, but we do see great mothers and fathers, so to speak, sons, that are surrounded by lions, giraffe, elephants, animals, my point, and great large bears, great large said dangerous animals. Okay, so if you slay the dragons, who's protecting the air? Who's protecting the ground? Who's protecting the great mothers? Now, you might get rid of all the dragons, but you're still left with giants. And I think the giants protected the mothers. Because there is something you still see to this day. I mean, I haven't been around a lot of youth, but when young males, when somebody talks about their mom and what can happen. Did you talk about my mama? Right? So, in the idea of taking, because giants have been demonized. So they're called the Nephilim. We've been told that they used to eat people. We have a whole story, Jack and the Beanstalk, Fee Fi Fo Fum, which I looked that up today. And Fee Fi Fo Fum basically means like delicious meal. That will be sufficient. I'm hungry. Something like that. We have been given these stories about how the giants are bad. Were they bad? Were they bad? Did they protect the great mothers? Did they listen to the great mothers? And were they still upholding matriarchal traditions? And so we give the story of David the patriarch to defeating this giant Goliath, who would have been actually protecting his mother and her, because she's supposedly a daughter of Moab, and that this is where Goliath, or the people of Gath, which they think is where Goliath gets his name. But then I did a little more research, and they're saying that the whole story could be completely made up. And it was used specifically to degrade and diminish Oprah, turn her bad, and uplift and kind of deify Ruth. But even still, Ruth is given the name of prophetess, I believe, in the book, and her daughters are important, but they are not named. Her sons are named. So we see this slow, not just elimination of the actual beings, but then the elimination of the authority, presence, and teachings of the great mothers, or truths of the great mothers. or they're literally turned into like, she's bad. Jezebel is another one. Like, males created these names. Males created these stories so that those who follow can agree and enable the harsh and unreasonable treatment of females, mothers, life bearers. And then you indoctrinate it through school, lack of emotional awareness, literal trauma to the nervous system, to the digestive system. It's the whole thing is to, and then put us in a calendar that's created by somebody who is only interested in taxes or in tithing. Because that's the other thing. The calendar ends on a day. I mean, technically, that's the other confusing thing. Like, Sunday is supposed to be the first day of the week. But it's been changed to the last day of the week. Or is that on purpose? So that you're in worship the first day of the week. And then week, what else, what word does that, like when I say week, you know what I mean. Semana in Spanish would be a better word, semana, right? Because weak in English also means like tired and not a lot of strength. Well, yeah, if you're not getting enough sleep and you're working all the time, yeah, you are having a work week. You're working to weakness. Like, you know, this is why we go into sometimes word breaking down, even phonetically, because our nervous system, our brain connects to vibration. The great mothers knew this. There are certain things that we would say and do on purpose because it reinforced the nervous system. It reinforced the chakra system. It reinforced healing, foods for healing, medicine. This all came from the great mothers. All of it. Everything that is like pulling our energy away from us and harming us was the good side of that by us. Now, I do think that we helped enable patriarchy by elevating the sons to positions that they really were not supposed to have. And then the places where that didn't happen, we were eliminated. Great mothers were simply eliminated. And then memories or stories retaught to those, specifically males who were left alive, who were left to like continue the story. Many of, as you know, if you've listened to some of my stories around the indigenous great mothers of North and South America, many of these tribes and clans were literally demolished, but then there would be like one male who would show up like over there, and they would say the last remaining said peoples. Well, okay, you know. And then so we have no memory, we have no history, we have no story. It's in the earth. It's been given to many sibyls that have reincarnated and returned. This is where we get that from. There are many sibyls who are remembering the true stories of the peoples without somebody alive to tell them these stories. And then those who do have great mothers who and sons, that elder sons that have passed down stories, they have held on to some of the memory and continued to enhance more remembering from their memory and their stories. So it's definitely shifting, and this is why I get into the stars. This is why I get into the moon and stars, because if we're going to really remember ourselves as great mothers, I feel like it goes back to how did we do things before? And how did we influence males to assist with us? Well, I think it was through steady teaching, and things were done differently, and we allotted space and time around recognizing what were emotions, how it affected our nervous system, how it affected each other's nervous systems. And we practiced knowing and having words and having expression. This is where creativity and working with the elements would have become so important, because we wouldn't want ourselves or our children to practice with the elementals without understanding their own emotions and where they want to direct that energy, because we knew it could harm them or others. And this is something we saw in nature, and we were able to apply it to our own lives. And we're surrounded with water, good food, living green foods. We created things so incredible that what we see today are those things either heightened in technology or hidden in technology to put in a conditional square, so to speak, house, box, our perception of reality, of who we are and what we're capable of, and specifically women. How the world must view and perceive women in order for the whole setup to keep working. And this is what is being dismantled, and this is why the kickback. Because they don't want us women, all women, coming together, defending each other, creating communities where we're like watching, protecting, speaking out, standing up. No, because that shuts the whole system down. It cannot function without the aggression and the emotional impulse that has been supported through patriarchy. Okay, wow. It's a deep video. Thanks for listening to all that. I hope that helps kind of bring some awareness as to where and why I share the information that I do, and giving the reverence to the star mother, Oprah, and the link to the possibility of why it even worked. Creating patriarchy, because we were so united before that it made it extremely difficult. And when you get into the stories of like the Amazons and Queen Amina and other great melanated mothers that led whole entire kingdoms and armies, or queendoms, you see where something had to shift in order to make it to where we even perceive that type of behavior as masculine. It originated from all of it. Everything comes from the great mothers first. Period. Is my theory. Okay, so it's also Female Reverence Sunday. So before we go, let's bring a little lightness in to this video. Not lightness. What I mean is like less heaviness. Not necessarily like this was bad. It's just heavy because it's a lot that great mothers have been through and have been separated from. And the idea of reconnecting us and bringing that, what I perceive as a golden age in the sense of what we were able to create how we were emotionally as far as evolutionary growth, right? I feel like we've regressed evolutionary when it comes to our emotions and our behaviors. It looks as though there was a time when it was about everything I've said, developing our elemental gifts, connecting with nature, and creating spaces of incredible healing and vibrational awareness. And I think we can come back to that. All right, so the card I pulled is the first card of the deck, Aine, A-I-N-E, Reclaim Joy. Reclaim Joy. All right, so let's find out about Aine. I feel like I read her a long time ago. And then I'll also look at the card at the bottom of the deck. And so in this, this might link to firsts. This may also link to the vibrational sound of like an, ain, the A sound, the connection to like I am or am I, right? The link there ish. You know, these are kind of just energetic things I'm putting in there. And newness, obviously she's a fae. Okay, so the Celtic or Celtic, however you pronounce it, sun goddess and Irish fairy queen, Aine, is a powerful goddess of love, light, fertility, so I'm going to say darkness as well, whose name means melody and bright. Her following is still strong and around Limerick, Ireland, where she is worshipped during the summer solstice. She is associated with fire and water, healing rites, and is said to be the one who gives and takes away the vital spark of life. As such, she is also associated with death and transition. Whoops, I really lowered that down. I apologize. Well, there's the darkness part, right? Death and transition. And darkness meaning the nurturing side of darkness, right? Known for her glow, and like all sides of darkness are nurturing is my point, okay? Known for her glow and radiant beauty, she is a goddess of nature and magic and the protectress of the fertility of all flora and fauna. Aine has a connection with lakes and wells that have remarkable curative properties, and on the night of the full moon, all heal night, rituals of healing are performed in her honor. Did you hear that? All heal night? That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. So, Aine gave birth to the first fairy human children via her numerous love affairs with men. She teaches us the meaning of love, about romantic love, and how to express lovemaking in a sacred yet playful manner. See? She's revered for her love affairs, right? This is how it should be. This is how it was. This is how we are. Okay? So, she is around, obviously, love and romance, so to speak, or the partnership of relationships. And she comes together. That's mostly her thing, is love and joy. So, she's around, like, libido and playfulness, anything that brings around that feeling of love and partnership is her energy. So that's interesting, huh? I don't think we've drawn her before. That was fun. Okay, and then interesting. I'll say that 5 more times. Lalita, who we had I'm pretty sure the last female Reverence Sunday. Lalita. Okay. And so this is front of the deck. And then Lalita is number 21. She has the peacock eye. So there, follow your bliss right after reclaim joy. All right. Lalita. Divine Mother, Lalita, is a beloved Hindu goddess, represents play, bliss, love. They're like interesting aspects of each other. She sets order into all creation and organizes karmic energies. She is trusted destiny to make final choice about whom she will marry. This is Lalita. She is connected to Shiva, and she was the leader of an army of female warriors, one of the most feared in the land. And I think I told the story, this is where they fell asleep, and then they wake up, her soldiers fell asleep, and then she gave birth to the god Ganesha. Okay, so she's also around utilizing the dark mother energy for creation and manifestation. She also is good around talents and bringing awareness to what you're interested in, what brings you bliss, happiness. Okay, so those are the cards for today as far as out of the Sacred Mothers and Goddesses on this Female Reverence Sunday, which wasn't fully around Goddess completely, but a little bit around Oprah and that story, and kind of, pointing out how important the Great Mother was, and always has been, and how that shift of teaching and kind of mental repetition, indoctrination, has influenced us to today and why I do what I do. All right, so thanks for listening, sharing, watching, subscribing. You can get a little bit more into what I talked about around the emotions on my Patreon. And any gifts or donations here help, and I appreciate your support and being here and listening. Thank you. All right.